Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It is a good afternoon. The weather looks terrible though. Not sure what's going on. All those cops are off the pier now. All right. I'm an associate member of T3 Trading Group, which is an SEC registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA SIPC. All of my trades are placed through T3 Trading Group. You should carefully consider whether trading is suitable for you in light of your own financial condition. There is the position disclosure. I'm out of Palantir again. I got out of whatever I was short. Short Apple last week. I was short Amazon today. I was short Walmart. I got out of Walmart. I didn't really renew most of my puts that I had sold. Just a little bit of SoFi, a little bit of Snap. And that's the updated position disclosure. I'm out of that Tello, T-E-L-O that was in. That was a good one on the bounce back. During a little bit of pain. Yeah, that is the updated position disclosure.
Let's clap it up for Derrick.
Having
a great day. Derrick, good job. Shit.
You guys are, it's just a course of doing business. Though, I guess I can say that it was the best day I've ever had, trading-wise, today. So, we're excited for that. I'm doing this for a couple years, so I don't normally get one of those new best days. But I got one today. All right, so let's jump in. SPYs are down 0.6%. Qs are down 0.8%. The IWM closed down 0.5%. TLT was down 0.8%, so interest rates were higher. The dollar closed green. Dollar's up 0.2%. So a little bit of a sell-off today. What did I do well in today was a combination of Palantir short and the Chinese exposure long. That's pretty much almost all my P&L comes from 3 Chinese stocks and Palantir. Yeah, so I should have done a better job communicating this in the morning meeting. You know, we were expecting nice job, Thomas. We were expecting the market to loosen up a little bit today because we knew that some of that heavy positive gamma that we were experiencing that was so insulating was rolling off at the end of last week. Some of it was set to roll off. We're still in a positive gamma environment, but I don't have an update on the number. I'm sure we'll get it over the course of the next couple of days. But we're going from like $10 billion in positive gamma, which when you hit that $10 billion number, I mean, it was relatively recent that on the SPX level that was the highest number I think that had ever been recorded. And then we had that one period, oh man, it's escaping me mentally on the chart where we got up to like 18 billion or something like that I think was last summer, probably last June or July or so. But we were in a really heavily positive gamma environment, and that was, amongst other things, feeding into this upside grind in the S&P where realized vol was really never up or down more than 0.5% in a day. The intraday ranges were really tight, but there was a lot of dispersion going on where the IWM was going, and the IWM took a break. Then the Qs were going, and the Qs, in my opinion, coming into today needed a break. But we saw a little bit of a sell across the board today, which we haven't seen in a bit. So we kind of sold everything back down. The Q chart, which I just still have up right now, looks very healthy. A price time correction in the Qs is very much needed. So, you know, even at today's close, Qs are at 522, ADMA is down a bit below 519. So the Qs could easily pull back another $3.50 and still be very healthy and very bullish. We could pull deeper than that. We could retest this breakout area around 516 in the Qs, which would be closer to the midpoint between the 8 and 21 EMA, and we would just be testing where the market had a huge breakout from just about a week ago. So, you know, all that would be healthy price action. There's no major cause for concern as far as I'm aware on the bullishness of this market. It's just, even within the confines of a beautiful uptrend where the market's working its way higher, I mean, what is the definition of an uptrend? An uptrend is a pattern of higher highs and higher lows. So inherently, in order for you to get a higher low, you have to get pullbacks over time when the market gets a little bit ahead of itself. So that's the Q chart. The IWM chart a little bit more concerning today because this kind of represents that the sell-off was across the board. The Russell had the opportunity today to do some healing to the upside today. The Russell, as we know, was no longer extended at all. This thing peaked out back in November 25th. Has not participated in the last leg of the rally in the S&P, which was like a weaker breath rally that was primarily coming from these Mag 7 names. But it was good, healthy pullback in the IWM, kind of hitting a low point 2 trading sessions ago on Thursday. Friday was an inside day. Today we were set for an inside and up, and I thought that the Russell would look pretty healthy if it could get back above like 240.50. And it did that. This morning the Russell was trying to be strong. It got above that 240.50 in the beginning of the day. This opening price action in the Russell, the first 45 minutes was great. You can see the Qs trading at the same time. They bounced a little bit, filled their gap, and then started to roll down heavy first. And then the Qs were starting to sell off around, what time was that? Qs made a pivot high and started selling down at like 9.50, 9.55. And then the IWM was able to hold up for an additional like 25, 30 minutes after that. And then they started their sell-off at about 10:15. And that sell-off was fast and furious when it actually hit. Somewhere near lows here, I know we were calling out for a bounce-back trade in some of these indexes, and that worked okay. I didn't actually take that trade myself. But popping back over to the daily chart of the Russell, this is now not a good-looking candle. You know, this was the opportunity for the Russell to create a pivot low via one of my favorite 2 pivot low setups within an uptrend, which is the inside nut pattern. So you get the pullback, the inside day breaks up. That's how you form the pivot low. So the Russell had an opportunity to do that today and failed. And it closed on lows and closed near the low from 2 trading sessions ago. So, you know, technically the Russell, it's not broken. You know, we're still above the 21. It's not necessarily the end of the world. You could have a deeper pullback, which would still overall be healthy. We could pull back to 235.50, create a pivot there, and still be healthy. But I would argue that this candle is a little bit damning, where we need to probably be a bit more cautious now in the Russell until we actually get a signal that comes in like a you know, downside tail candle into you know, that 235 to 236 quarter area, broadly speaking. So, you know, I think that there's some signals out there that are, I said in the morning meeting, like, I'm still bullish because I don't want to fight the flows, but there's some things under the surface that are starting to happen here that have me more cautious than I've been at any point in these last several weeks, where, as everyone knows, I've just been a gung-ho bull. At a certain point, you know, mid-November and the second half of November, my motto was, you know, just tell me what I can buy. Give me the setup so I can buy it. I'll buy anything. Give me the setup so I can buy it. And I'm not having that degree of bullishness now, which is not to say that I'm bearish. I still think that the market overall technically is healthy. We got just a pullback in the SPYs to the ADMA on the daily, pretty much. So this is basically the first time that we've even touched the ADMA on the daily since November 21st. It's really impressive that we've managed to not touch the ADMA since November 21st, especially when you consider that none of these updates were dramatically really more than like 0.5% on the upside. So all this is, you know, pull back to the ADMA and the SPYs, not even that deep in the Qs, a little bit more concerning for the Russell, but it's not necessarily broken. So, you know, this market here is, it's had a big move, but we started to see at the end of last week some of that really big smart money VIX call buying that was coming in. You know, I wanted to see VVIX get to like the upper 70s or even 80 to start looking at that trade, but I know Bill was chattering about some potential of us not even really getting to that point, and then we were seeing the big upside VIX calls come in. We had a gap up in the VIX today, and the VIX closed back above 14 after it had been trading at a 12 handle, and that kind of corresponded with some of this gamma roll off that led to a little bit of a pullback on the market. So, you know, I guess to sum that up, as we're seeing, I think we saw even more of those VIX calls hit today, and the other concern that I've started to have was just the degree of the insanity of some of these individual stocks. Seemed like it was just getting a little bit out of control, and that's usually a signal that you're closer. I guess the best way to describe it is I feel like there's been a bunch of signals that would let us know that we're closer to the end of this immediate move than the beginning of it, but not necessarily at the end because, like I said, we know that there is still a good amount of forced flow that's coming into this market every single day. Even today, our big sell-off day, the SPYs are down 0.6%. This is not the end of the world. So no reason to say, hey, I'm going to be, start being a really, really big bear here. There's no signals for that. There's just a couple of little warning signs under the surface with the way we pulled back today and, the VIX calls that we're seeing that say, hey, maybe be a little bit less bullish than we were a few weeks ago. And that's it. I don't like to fight the flows, which is why immediately after the election, when we were super extended into SPY 600 for that first time, and I found myself short a lot of things just because of the market extension, I was short a lot of things and hated my positioning. I was like, I really hope that I'm able to get this pullback in the market off this extension so I can get out of these shorts and start really piling into the long side. And thankfully, the market gave that to me on November 15th. So, I think that's really where we're at on a macro perspective. Let's see where we gap tomorrow and then take it from there. As far as individual stocks go, it was another day where there was just a lot of good opportunity out there. The one I'm upset that I missed on was this SLUN into $16. I know Dennis caught it, maybe a couple other people caught it. Day 4 to the upside. I just didn't want to be too early on that. 16 was really the spot that I wanted to look for. It got up there perfectly and rolled down. So I know that was one that we were looking for today, and it worked out. It worked out pretty well. The Palantir gap up today seemed like we were getting climactic. I couldn't be certain if we were gonna hit a climax today or if we were gonna get another, strong bid today that closes us at 87 and gaps us to 92, and then that's it. I could have seen another day come, but we discussed the important pre-market levels. That 82 on the upside if buying momentum is coming in, and that 80 to 80.50 area on the downside if the opposite's coming in. So the gap up in Palantir this morning, despite there being, I guess, some good news that I think was already well telegraphed, really seems like it's a bit of a climactic sell today. So at the same time, all it is a pullback to the 80 MA on the daily. The difference now is that this is a very high volume, basically negative Maribozu. It's the highest volume day in this entire upcycle, outside of the day that the company actually reported earnings, which is part of what set all this off to begin with. So this candle reminds me a little bit of the MSTR candle. The MSTR candle was more extreme because the extension was more extreme. That day 4 to the upside, massive gap up, but then we closed with basically at lows, a very small downside tail right into the 80 MA on the daily. Compare that to the Palantir candle. Day 3, gap up to the upside, but getting a lot of extension into that gap up, but it gets sold down pretty much into the 80 MA with a very small tail. So I'm curious to see if Palantir's pattern now builds out in the same way that the MSTR one does. It's going to be difficult for Palantir to break below this 80 MA on the daily because it has not done that in a long time. This thing has been riding this 80 MA on the daily up for weeks on that 45-degree kind of trend that then broke higher, but sometimes it's the break higher that actually enables the pull-in to be able to occur. So like if you go back to like this MSTR, you could see this was kind of also riding up the 8 in this accelerated uptrend, broke higher, went parabolic, pulled back into that on that day 1, rested into it a couple days in a row before it gave a little bit of a deeper pullback to the 21, and then it's going to build out a pattern. So I'm kind of wanting to see if Palantir can do the same thing here. I've got a good bit less stock than I had at like $82 pre-market when I was shorting this thing very, very heavily today. But I'm curious to see if this thing can more or less hold like between like 70 and 73, 74 for the next couple trading sessions, have a little bit of added weight then onto that 80 EMA, and then break down to the 21 EMA. Pretty much the exact same pattern as MSTR is what I'm looking for. Dare I say that the easy part of the move is done, insofar as today's down move. It gets trickier from here, and then we'll see. Speaking of the crypto names, nasty day for some of those crypto names. Bitcoin not necessarily the end of the world. If you're trying to be a super momentum crypto bull, you don't want to see this IBIT ETF getting back below like 56.36. It had this bull wedge that it broke out of last week. It did get back below that 56.36 today. It closed below it, gave a little bit of a downside tail, but it closed below it. Again, not the end of the world to be back within the pattern, still above the 21 EMA, which is rising. But it is now a failed break on a bullish pattern, so we'll see if that leads to anything. And one other thing that we noted in the morning meeting today about Bitcoin itself is I actually feel like Bitcoin should be much higher, considering the data we've seen on just how much Sailor and MicroStrategy have bought over the course of the last couple of weeks. We knew that he bought some at the end of November, and then we saw this morning that there was a whole bunch of additional buying that took place between, I think, December 2nd and December 6th. I don't know if anybody's in the VTF and can copy and paste the buy numbers that were posted in the VTF pre-market that they had done. I'd be curious to look at them again. But it's interesting to me that amount of buying was done, like however many billions of dollars of buying of Bitcoin was done, and that it didn't actually drive the price of the coin higher. I would really expect that to be up. So that's interesting that it couldn't move higher and then worked its way back down. And then you look at like MSTR, and MSTR looks terrible. That this needed to go. We called this out, and some of you guys shorted it. I didn't get involved in that trade. This needed to go on Thursday. So similar to Bitcoin having that, bull pennant that it was breaking out of, this was also building a bullish wedge holding above this 21 EMA. The upward point of that wedge was about $420, $418. They gapped it all the way up to 440 that day and closed it on lows. That was a big signal to me that this thing is done for a while. Unless it can somehow get back above that and negate that candle. That was a hugely damning candle for MicroStrategies on Thursday. Now again today you got some downside follow through. It's testing the 21 EMA, but you're also looking at a failed pattern, this MSTR, and this is right after he just bought a boatload of Bitcoin on an average price of, I don't know, you guys tell me if you can look that up, like $96,000 or something. And so if you start really getting Bitcoin to be below even that amount, I know his average price is much lower, and I would love to see an update on MicroStrategy's average price on Bitcoin if anybody has that data. But if you start to really get a further sell-off in Bitcoin on that failed pattern, its MSTR should trade significantly worse than Bitcoin does. So there might even be like a momentum short here for those who are brave through like the $360 area, pretty much kind of through today's low, through 360, through that zone. And then, Coinbase today, not a good candle. This thing we had called out as a long just a few trading sessions ago through this, like, I think 316 area. It was actually a great trade. There was a lot of relative strength in Coinbase. And this one also lost that breakout on a closing basis today on a not good looking candle. So these crypto names are not looking good. Flipping over to Tesla. Tesla was a good short today. Probably a bit of both, Rich. Tesla was a good one today. I know Josh was enduring a little bit of a pain because he started shorting this thing on Friday into the close. But for me, I didn't have a position. I didn't trade it too heavily just because I was so focused on some other things. But Tesla, the lower high, I talked about it a lot in the kind of podcast thing I did with Greta at 12:30 today, so you guys can go back and look at that. But this was a good short on that lower high that paid pretty well. And then in the afternoon, I started shorting some Amazon. Amazon, I had also written down on my list as a potential short RDR trade on this like day 8 or whatever it is to the upside with a ton of extension. Amazon actually held in really well in the beginning portion of the day. I didn't short Amazon until almost 2 o'clock. and it's unusual for me to put a new position on at that time of the day. But you had this little bit of a lower high come in. It couldn't retest this 230 resistance that it had already held twice. So shorted a bit of Amazon at that area. I had a target of 225, which is a very shallow target. Amazon could pull back to 218 and still be very healthy. But like I said a bunch of times, the market's been so bullish that for the most part on the shorts I've been taking, I've been having these relatively shallow targets. So, Amazon I'm shorting at whatever I just said, 229 and change. If I can make $4 on that, down to 225, I'm happy. Was closing around 226, so I just decided to liquidate the position. And then finally, I got out of Walmart today. This is another one that I easily could be more greedy on. I'm just not being super greedy on these shorts. I started shorting this very small a few trading sessions ago, pretty much at 94. But then I sized up a good bit up as this thing. I mean, Walmart doesn't normally trade like this. Like, it didn't go parabolic the way Palantir or Tesla went parabolic or MSTR went parabolic, but this is not that type of speculative stock. I mean, we're talking about Walmart here. And this one was also breaking out of like that 45-degree trend to the upside, although not as extreme. So I was layering into this one end of last week and added pre-market this morning and caught that move. And I just fully liquidated the position at near lows, actually, in front of that 90. I had a target 93.50, and I think I closed it out at like 93.62 or something like that, just because I was running out of time to get to my target, and it was too close to my target to continue to swing it. But you could be more greedy on this easily. This thing could very easily pull back to $92, even in a strong market. But for me, like I said, I'm just kind of having some of these shallow targets. This I was just managing to the 80 MA. So, good trading session today. I think we were prepared for it. A lot of stuff worked out really well. And that's all I got. So I am happy to take a look at whatever questions you guys have or whatever names or anything else that you guys want me to look at. Cool, so scrolling up here. Yeah, so this AI reported earnings after the close is up huge. It's interesting. The numbers look decent, but they don't look overwhelming to me. What's Oracle doing? Oracle, we also had out after the close. Oracle's trading down. Assess that further in the morning. From Nathan here, MicroStrategy has acquired 21,000 and change Bitcoin for $2.1 billion at $98,783 per Bitcoin. Their average price is just over 60,000. At what price does Bitcoin have to trade for this leverage bet to blow up is really the question that I would love to know. I'm not sure if that math is possible with a review of the company, and they could always raise more money, but I'm really curious about it. From Adam, hey Derrick, I'm restricted on time today, so I have to come back to your commentary later on the YouTube, but I'm hoping to get your feedback on one or both of my losers today. They're fairly similar. I took Amazon short at 636, so pre-market on the daily extension and the small time frame upper tails. All right, let's take a look at the pre-market. Got to be a little careful overreading pre-market price action. That's 636. Are you talking Eastern time? I feel like you might be talking a different time zone. Let's always try 9:36. Okay, thanks for the clarification. Yeah, let's just always try to. I'm not always on Eastern time myself. I spend a lot of time on Mountain time, but just for the sake of uniformity, when we're talking about charts at different times, we should try to stick to the Eastern time for it. All right, so at the open, you got the daily chart extension. You had an upside tail here on the first 5-minute candle. It sounds to me like the structure, based on the structure of your question, that you're looking at like a 1 or 2 minute chart. You know, I don't love those. But I see here that there were 2 upside tails on this 2 minute chart. But if you look at this 5 minute chart, there is an upside tail, but it's not even really 50%. It's a little less than 50% of the candle. So hard to read that necessarily as overly bearish. But let's see. But you certainly have the daily chart extension. It was on my list for a short today. Small time frame is extended at highs. You do get a tail there. So you did 2 entries. One at 228.64. All right. Probably, I'm assuming in the second candle. And then at 229.22, which sounds like that's an average up and all in the same trade. And that's what I would encourage you to average up versus a stop loss. So I like that. After the second 640 tail. All right, so it broke a new high there. I'm guessing you didn't stop yourself out on that new high. Because it broke the opening high on the 640 candle, and now you're telling me that you're then adding more versus the 229.59 high. Okay. But it already broke that high on the 940 candle, so I'm not sure if I'm missing something here based on what you're telling me. Unless you shorted it on the way up before that high broke. You must have done that all within this candle and then got stopped out versus that high. That must be the case. Plus 2 cents. I hate plus 2 cents. What? Plus 1 cent. Plus 2 cents doesn't do anything for you except give you a worser, which is not a word, but I like to use it anyway. Give you a worse exit price, because my buy stop which is gonna be 1 cent above the pivot, will trigger your buy stop, which is 2 cents above the pivot, but you're gonna get worse liquidity because my order went first. Grinded up and stopped you out. Okay, I wouldn't classify that as a grind. I'm probably nitpicking words here. And the only reason I'm nitpicking words is because I'm concerned that you're looking at a chart that's less than a 5 minute chart, in which case maybe in your mind it's a grind. But if you look at this 5 minute chart, that's not a grind. That's a strong first bar with a little bit of an upside tail, and then it's an inside 5 and up. And this is a very bullish looking 5 minute pattern. The only thing I would say about it that would be negative would be exactly what I said about Tesla at a certain point today with my trade when I was talking to Greta about bullish patterns on 5 minute charts within the confines of huge daily chart extension are bullish patterns that I don't like to buy. And if anything, they're bullish patterns that I like to short the failure of, because of the daily chart extension is more important than the 5 minute bull pattern, though the 5 minute bull pattern should still be recognized for what it actually is. So wouldn't classify that as an upside grind. Strong first bar, inside and up. This is looking like continuation higher to me, except that you've got a bit of extension on the 5 minute chart, and again a ton of extension on the daily chart. Let's continue to review. So it stopped you out, and then it gave a move down to 228, where it acted. So that's when it's actually testing this ADMA. And at that point, you're stopped out. It would have covered your risk, but that doesn't matter because you already stopped out. Then it gave a reshort opportunity, which was part of your original game plan. So you had a game plan of, if you were going to get stopped out, that you would reshort. That's a fairly complex game plan, and I've never really had a game plan like that, I don't think, because then you're kind of building in the possibility that your first trade's going to fail. I guess that's not entirely true. You know, sometimes I'll give myself just second shots on a trade if the trade resets up, but I don't really have that, I guess, as part of my original game plan, which isn't to say that you can't. Before the larger move down to 226, I didn't feel early at the time of execution, but should I have let this develop more? That would kind of be my argument, is that you either need to let it develop a little bit more, or I don't hate your first trade, to be honest, and I don't hate the double down on it. I don't hate the stop out on it. I really don't hate the trade at all. I just don't want you to be having like FOMO on getting like. I don't dislike your trade, but it's a trade that's very easy to get shaken out of the way it developed. So I wouldn't classify any of this as wrong. I don't want this to be one of those situations where you're like, oh my god, they shook me out of my great trade and my great idea, and then it worked, and you're overly kicking yourself on that. Like, I think your trade is fine, but at the same time, it's also a little bit of what you're saying. Like, if it developed more, it could have given you a little bit of a better entry, or if the idea, like, I would say that your 5-minute execution is like very B minus, C plus, right? But that might be good enough because of what we're talking about on the daily chart. But then it's like, if that execution is very C plus, B minus, should you just be using the high of this first 5-minute candle tail as the stop loss? And I don't hate that. Again, I don't hate that. I think that the answer is yes, you can do that, but that you shouldn't be surprised at all to actually get shaken out of the trade, and then for it to potentially work. So you could choose to say, all right, like, I'm recognizing I'm putting my stop here. I don't love the stop, but if I get shaken out, I'll just kind of continue to watch it for like a new setup or a new trade. And maybe that's even what you're saying when you're talking to me about part of my original game plan was to look for a reshorting opportunity. Or you just need to be able to be implementing more of the type of strategy where I utilize sometimes, where I'm trading that upside extension without necessarily having a hard stop in it, which I know is not for everybody because, you got to be able to kind of afford it.
Quitters.
But let me read the rest of what you're saying. I didn't feel early at the time of execution, but should I have let it develop more? Well, hold on. What happened with your re-entry? And then it gave a reshort opportunity, which is part of my game plan. All right, so I haven't read that yet, or you haven't told me. Let me see. Should I have let it develop more? I'm wondering if I can adjust something, better execution, to avoid getting stopped out before the move like this, or if I just go to bad break here. Yeah, I think I kind of answered that one already. All right, so but what I'm failing to see here in your question is, it gave a reshort opportunity, but you're not describing any execution on that reshort opportunity. Did you not take the trade? I'm not sure where your reshort opportunity is specifically, what you're looking at from an execution perspective. Maybe this was like an inside 5 and down? It's not. It's a little bit tricky. The execution to reshort anywhere up here after the new high comes in, after this pullback to 850 and the bounce back, looks really difficult to me. I don't really know, like, there's no signal in here for me to execute that short. So circling back to what I was saying originally, like, I kind of just feel like you're, like, that stop loss, that execution, I like the bigger picture idea. It was even my idea off the Amazon extension short. I just think that the specifics of the execution and the stop are like, again, they're very C plus, B minus, which therefore means you just had a higher probability of getting shaken out. So your question here even seems like you were prepared for that, but then didn't actually take the execution. So that's kind of the extent of my feedback on it. And then similarly, you took an IWM short. Just keep in mind that the IWM is where the relative strength was. At 240.95 on the 955 candle. Okay. Off the 5-minute extension. On 241 daily resistance level. I would argue that this thing was pretty bullish above 240.50, but okay. But you do have this nice 5-minute extension, and it's working towards 10:15. 10:15, 10:30 is when the 15-minute extension starts to matter more. And the 5-minute upper tails. This one, I immediately felt I was too focused on the smaller time frame, and felt that the daily was way more bullish. Yeah, so that's my take on it. I don't love this trade because the daily is super bullish, and there's a ton of relative strength here. I don't hate it either, though, because you've got a lot of extension on a 5-minute chart after shooting stars coming in. That was another trade that I would say it's like, it's nothing to write home about, but it's fine. And I would hope that depending on your execution, you might not have gotten it, that the downside tail that came in on on a 10 a.m. candle was enough for you to get some risk covered? And the answer to that is whether or not that's true or not really depends on what price you got on the short. But it's very close either way. Yeah, and then it pushed you out and then worked. You know, it's a tough trade. I don't think that you could have. I certainly was not predicting that the IWM was going to sell like this. I was very bullish on the IWM at 10 a.m. I was surprised by the degree of the sell-off. Seeing it in the Qs are relatively weak. Seeing the way that traded today did not surprise me at all. Seeing the SPYs acting a little bit weak as well, just off the back of some of those mega caps. Why does my chart look crazy? Did not surprise me at all. But this IWM, the daily chart looks super strong. There's a ton of relative strength there. You know, you're kind of just taking like a cute little, and I take these trades too, they're just not like A+ setups. You're taking just like a cute little trade off of like a 5-minute chart because there's some 5-minute extension there to try to make a few dollars. So it should be the type of trade where it's like it's worth taking because you'll make a little bit of money in the long run, but there's going to be plenty of times where it doesn't work or stops you out, and plenty of times where it does work. So, you know, I don't think that there's another one that you should be upset about. I just think that you should review the premise of the trade to make sure that you're assessing how good of a trade it is correctly. Because I'm fine with this trade. I just don't think it's like a phenomenal trade where you should be very upset that you got stopped out at. And I think it would be a mistake to look at the selling that the Russell had from 10.15 to 11.15 where it dropped like a rock and think that you should have caught that move. I'll tell you, if I was shorting the Russell at that time off the same trade, I would have been out of this thing by 240.70 probably at best. Maybe at best like lows. No, not even. I wouldn't even have caught that. I would have been out of this so shallow, which is why, you know, it's not a phenomenal trade. It's a very okay mediocre trade. You get shaken out of a mediocre trade, that's going to happen all the time, and it should basically be expected and built in, and you don't take them with a lot of risk, and you just try to make a little bit of cash flow for yourself, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't, it's the minorest of paper cuts. So I hope that helps. Varun asking me about ASML. Yeah, the semiconductors are not trading right, which is another thing that I was thinking about when I was even looking at Palantir and the whole AI story right now, is that, you know, a lot of these semiconductor names, they're supposed to be the railway for all of the AI related companies, and none of them are trading right now. Well, I don't like that this ASML is back below 725. I don't like how Nvidia traded today. I definitely don't like how AMD traded today. Intel is trading terribly. Micron it's okay as long as it holds above like 96 to 100, but there's nothing right home about that either. It's just very sloppy and range bound. SMCI is in a world of its own, but you know, we all know the disaster from SMCI that's occurred. Yeah. Oh, Adam giving me more information. I missed this. Oh, this is back on the IWM. So stopped you out by less than 10 cents before giving the move that I was looking for. Yeah, I think I just went over this in enough detail. I don't know how or why you would expect this kind of move to come in the IWM here. I think that I don't see that at all. I never would have put myself in the position to capture this IWM down move. I think there was no signal for that at all. It just the market decided to kind of puke out across the board a little bit.
On the daily at that time, IWM looked bullish.
Right, and the Russell looked pretty bullish on the daily at that point. What's my game plan for China? So I got out of my yin position today entirely. I got to my target. I got out of JD at one point entirely today at highs, but I did buy back really small into the pullback. So I'm selling into this up move, but I'm still a China bull. It was just a really big gap up. The one that I still have a decent amount on is Alibaba, but I also took a bunch of that off. But I'm looking for a move in Alibaba back to the low 100s is my game plan. I don't know, Varun. I think you needed for Michael Saylor more proof of concept to be able to raise more of that money. If MSTR drops 50%, the levered ETFs will blow up like the XIV did. Oh. Cool. Looks like I covered the VTF. Popping over to the YouTube. Ooh, we got a bunch of comments in here. Starting from the top, from Kevin. Do we think the end of the year approaching and funds considering their tax burden is part of the sell-offs? I would think so on things that are weak into the year. I was also talking about this with Greta a little bit. There's not a lot out there to do tax loss harvesting in, with the S&P and the Nasdaq up as much as it did. So yeah, I mean, you got to find the pockets of weakness.
Am I waiting for you, or am I seeing you over there?
It's up to you. I can go as soon as we're done with the meeting. Sorry, I was talking to Josh for a second. Yeah, so that's why, I had been concerned on these Chinese stocks that even though I'm bullish on them fundamentally, I was just worried at this point, now that we're in December. I think there's a lot of people that are probably out of the money in these things, that they could just be heavy through the end of the year. But then we got news this morning that woke it up. So that's an example. Or there's some of these energy names that have not traded well this year. That could be some other examples. So yeah, I'll just be a little bit cautious on things that are down on the year already into the end of this year. I often trade NQ futures, and Friday was the first time I saw the Qs and NQ move that independently from NVIDIA. I think I've seen that sometimes. I saw some of it today, though not as incongruent. Yeah, so thanks for the observation. It just goes back to the dispersion thing that we've spent a lot of time talking about, where if the SPYs are going to stay flat, but they're going to sell NVIDIA down, then they have to buy up other things in the Mag 7, and that can help the Qs hold up a little bit better. That definitely helps the SPYs hold up better. From Robert, I traded Alibaba today as well at the 10:30 pullback to the $94 level. Okay, yep, I had reloaded some stock that I had sold higher there myself, but I missed the opening momentum. These stocks are very hard to day trade. I'm going to just interrupt your question. I know that they were decent day trading vehicles for a small period of time at the end of September and beginning of October, just because those names were moving crazy, because there was crazy speculation. These stocks are generally really hard to trade intraday. I mean, just look at Alibaba. This thing gave a $6 gap up to have a $2 intraday move. I mean, that's just how they trade, because they trade overseas and then gap based on this. The bigger action's happening overseas. Almost always. Not always, but almost always. You missed the opening momentum because we were extended. It's probably a good thing. After reviewing the pre-market action, would you be comfortable to say we could go long BABA at the open because we had two strong volume candles in the pre-market? I'm going to say no on this. But the reason I'm saying no is not because of the chart pattern, it's because of the stock itself. Yeah. I just don't think these are good names to day trade unless we really go back into a period like we had like a couple months ago. Nah, I see the rest of your question, but I think I answered it. I don't love it. Next in here, from someone whose name I can't pronounce in the VTF, on MSTR. Isn't he raising equity and zero coupon convertible debt? It's hard to go broke on that. I mean, unless it gets converted and he's not willing to do it anymore. I mean, he's levered up on this Bitcoin stuff, and he's got debt. So, convertible debt is still something that has to either be converted, or even if it's zero coupon, you still have to pay the debt back. So if his average price, I'm just going to use it a random crazy example, and I'm not saying there's not a prediction of any sort, but if his average price is 60,000 and Bitcoin went to 20,000, let's just say, where is the capital coming from to, you either got to convert that debt or you have to pay back the debt holders, even if it's zero coupon. So how are you going to do that without being forced then to sell down those crypto holdings at those prices? I agree with him personally. That on what you said here, heads he wins and tails he doesn't lose, because he's not doing this with his personal money. I agree with you entirely. I would hope for his sake that he's just finding a way to pull money out of this scheme, so that way heads he wins and tails he wins, because either this thing he's doing continues to work, his Bitcoin keeps moving up and it's great, or the big pullback happens and the whole thing blows up and he still pulled out a lot of money in the meantime, and he doesn't have personal liability, I don't think. So I think that there's a real chance that this MSTR goes to zero at a certain point in the future if the crypto story doesn't work perfect. But I say that as I'm not betting on it. I don't have a position. I wouldn't own at this point MSTR if I was a Bitcoin bull. I would own Bitcoin. Also, the debt holders are in front of the equity holders, of course, in the capital structure, but they came in at worse prices. Of course. That's how it always works in in a bankruptcy situation, if that were ever to happen. It might not seem fair, but that's the way it always works in a bankruptcy proceeding. Cool. Thanks for the commentary. Back over to the VTF. How did you manage your AMD position? Do you have a stop loss in it? I do not have a stop loss in it. I just followed my game plan. I actually called for AMD to be a short today, in the morning meeting. On the breakdown through that 135 area, I felt it could be a short, just because this stuff's not trading well. I have a small core position in AMD that I'm probably still in the money on. I'd have to check, actually. It's probably close, but I would assume I'm still in the money on my AMD position, even at $131. It's a small position that I'm just kind of managing, so this is not a trade that I'm managing with a stop loss. Actually, I guess I kind of am. My planned stop loss in AMD is $100, so I'm willing to give it another $32 from here, but I'm small. It's not a day trade for me. I've been in this for weeks. I think I'm in it since November 15th, and then I traded it really well on November 27th. Yeah, I'm definitely still in the money on this trade as I think about it, even at 130, 131 here. So I'm not rushing out of this. So if you took it as a day trade today, I don't like that as a day trade long. I was kind of bringing it up in the morning meeting as another short, even though I'm long, which I do sometimes. Worser. From Maroon. I don't even know what you're saying, Maroon.
Let's go get drunk. You guys.
All right. Looks like I got through all the questions. What do you mean, no? Are you asking me about turtles or something? Just cover ASML. You're short?
No, he's saying, could you go over ASML real quick?
I already went over ASML.
Yeah, bro.
Well, so what else do you need to know about it?
He's not gonna change his opinion the second time around.
Guys talking about turtles. Oh, you weren't here? I don't like it if it's holding below 725. The semiconductor space doesn't look good to me right now, generally speaking. Oh, Lisa Turtle. Of course I know Lisa Turtle. Say by the bell. All right, on that note, I'm out of here.
Peace out.
Have a good night, everybody. See you tomorrow.